So hi, good morning everyone. My name is Yanni Lin, and on behalf of the Asian American Bar Association Civil Rights Committee, welcome to today's event, We Belong. And thank you to the Jonathan Logan Family Foundation for this incredible space. It is our hope today that the speakers you'll hear from, as well as the exhibit itself, will be thought-provoking, informative, and galvanizing. It's now my honor to introduce Don Tamaki, the first speaker. Don's parents and extended family were incarcerated first in the horse stalls of Tanforan Racetrack in San Bruno, which had been converted to a temporary prison camp, then at Topaz Concentration Camp in Utah. A graduate of UC Berkeley and UC Berkeley School of Law, he is a managing partner of the law firm Manami Tamaki, LLP. With roots in the legal nonprofit sector, Don helped found the Asian Law Alliance in San Jose and served as the executive director of the Asian Law Caucus in San Francisco. He continues providing services to community groups today. From 1983 to 1985, he served on the legal team, which reopened the landmark Supreme Court case Korematsu versus United States, which overturned Fred Korematsu's criminal convictions for refusing to be incarcerated. The reopening was based on newly discovered evidence from the Justice Department, War Department, Navy, FBI, and FCC, admitting that Japanese Americans had committed no wrong and posed no threats. Other Justice Department memoranda characterized the Army's claims that Japanese Americans were spying as intentional falsehoods. These official reports were never presented to the court because they were intentionally suppressed, altered, or destroyed so as to manipulate the outcome of the Korematsu decision. The Korematsu legal team worked with Atkin Gump in filing an amicus brief in Trump versus Hawaii to remind the court and the public of the perils to democracy when courts blindly defer to government's unsubstantiated claim that national security justifies curtailment of fundamental liberties. On June 26, 2018, the court upheld the travel ban. And in a blistering dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor cited the amicus brief. Don helps lead public awareness campaign aptly named Stop Repeating History and speaks regularly at events like this one. Please join me in welcoming Don Tamaki.
Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. I'm glad that the Asian American Bar Association sponsored this and was able to feed everyone. My understanding is that the food actually got delivered to 100 Montgomery Street in the financial district. So I'm glad it actually made its way here. I want to thank the Asian American Bar Association for doing this. Thank you, Yanni. Thank you, Lisa Mack. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you all who were involved in putting this together. I'm so happy that among the crowd there are young people here, because I think this is an important lesson not only to know historically, but going forward. Right here was ground zero for the designing and the implementation of the rounding up of almost 120,000 Americans of Japanese ancestry, 2/3 who were like my parents, actually born in this country, American citizens by birth. And in December 7th, 1941, as you all know, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, and literally the next day, the Secret Service and the FBI swept into San Francisco, Oakland, Portland, Los Angeles, Seattle, all up and down the West Coast, and began arresting community leaders, Japanese school teachers, martial arts instructors, Buddhist and Shinto priests. And those people were literally taken away immediately. And their families did not know where they were or or when they would see them again. At that time, February 19th, 1942, the President, Roosevelt, signed Executive Order 9066, and it declared this entire area of the West Coast, obviously here, and the states of Washington, Oregon, California, southern half of Arizona, as under the jurisdiction of a military commander by the name of John L. DeWitt, based here in the Presidio. And together, he, along with his Lieutenant Carl Bedetson, Stanford-educated lawyer, basically hatched out a program, first to begin with curfew, that Japanese Americans could not leave their houses after 8 p.m. at night, had to stay there till 6 in the morning. And literally within a week or two, the rounding up occurred, in which orders to report to what was called euphemistically as assembly centers, where actually they were temporary prison camps. And in this area, it was San Bruno Tanforan Racetrack, now a shopping center, but at that time was a racetrack. They surrounded it with barbed wire and machine gun towers, and all the folks in Oakland, San Francisco, this entire Bay Area, were herded into horse stalls. And to this day, I keep my father's diploma from the University of California at Berkeley. He was about to graduate, and he was sent off, and the diploma was sent to him. It was scrolled in a mailing tube, and it said, Tanforan Assembly Center, Barrack 29, Apartment 5. And you can imagine what Apartment 5 was. It was a horse stall. And if you've ever been around horses or farm animals, you know, this is a unheated, you know, stall, manure, straw on the floor, no heat, no electricity. That was where they lived until 10 more permanent concentration camps were constructed from here, from California to Arkansas. 3 individuals didn't cooperate with him. One of them was Gordon Hirabayashi of the Bay Area. Another was, Fred Korematsu of the Bay Area, Gordon Hirabayashi, a student at Seattle University of Washington. And Minoru Yasui had just graduated from law school, University of Oregon Law School. And the government defended this entire program on the grounds that Japanese Americans were engaging in spying and espionage. You know, they were being disloyal to the country. There was only one thing wrong with that claim. It was completely made up. And when we walk out and take a look at the tour, I'll talk about the evidence that every intelligence agency had said that what the Army was claiming was intentional falsehoods and fabrications. And there was this debate within the Justice Department as to whether those reports and facts were to be disclosed to the US Supreme Court. Well, fast forward to June of 2018, when this Supreme Court upheld the so-called travel ban, banning travel from 5 Muslim majority countries. And as in 1943 and 44, the government defended the travel ban, the shutdown of the country, of Muslims entering the country, on the grounds that it makes the country safer. It cited a global intelligence report of the Homeland Security, but when the court asked for the report and be able to see it, the government refused to disclose it. When that case was decided last year, 5-4 decision, the court upheld the travel ban. It continues to separate families, American families today. And the government essentially, the court essentially took the government's word for it, that this actually makes the country safer. And no one asked then and today, and no one asked in 1944 or 1943 whether this was a necessity, whether it did in fact make the country safer, or whether it was in fact instead the fulfillment of bigoted campaign promises and racist policies. And so unfortunately, that's what makes this exhibit so relevant today. Why does this all matter? Well, it matters because this president has sent literally thousands of troops to terrorize a distant group of migrants at the border. It matters because children have been separated from their parents, as you know. 6 children to date have died in ICE custody. We talk about people being put in horse stalls, people are being held in detention centers with children as if they were animals. I mean, these are facilities designed to hold adult males mainly, and concrete floors, no beds, and people are housed indefinitely under those conditions. It matters because last year, the president ordered the deportation of over 300,000 people who've been here for over 10 years, who are from Somalia, they're from El Salvador, they're from Haiti, and other countries, granted temporary protective status because of war or natural disasters. And suddenly, the government has taken the position that those people ought to be deported, which would, rip families apart. And Federal District Court Judge Edward Chen here in San Francisco, who was actually on the legal Korematsu team in reopening the cases that Yanni described, basically cited Trump's claims that Haitians have AIDS, that Mexican are drug dealers and rapists, that Nigerians would never go back to Africa to their huts, and why can't we have more people from Norway? These are quotes, I'm not making this stuff up, at a joint briefing on immigration that he made before other congressional leaders. So that's why it matters, and in particular for Asian Americans who are sponsoring this event, I would say to us that we have something to say about this. Why? Because we have seen this before. The legal tradition of the courts not asking any questions when the government invokes national security and deferring to the government in the cases of national security, that actually started in 1882 with the Chinese Exclusion Act, one of the first travel bans in this country. It was reaffirmed in Korematsu versus the United States. The court simply accepted the government's word for it, that this roundup that you're about to learn about was necessary for the nation's safety. It was reaffirmed in Trump versus Hawaii, the so-called travel ban. And some of the worst elements of the Korematsu case basically became imported into Korematsu versus the United States. And it's happening, we're living in an atmosphere where I would say most of the categories that account for our presence here in the United States, I'm talking about family reunification, birthright citizenship, refugee status, all of those are under attack. Refugee visas have been cut by more than half. Where would Asian Americans of Southeast Asian descent fleeing from war and violence in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, where they would not be here. Their families would either be locked up or might even be dead. Family reunification resulting from the reforms in 1960s, that accounts for most Asian Americans in this country. You know what that's being called? Chain migration. And people being born here. I mean, my grandfather was a stowaway, paid a ship's cook to hide him in the pantry on a steamer from Hawaii to Eureka, came down, established the family in San Francisco, making my father an anchor baby. Even birthright citizenship is under attack. So what does that make me, literally? So I think the point is, I'm going to quote Charles Jung here, that for Asian Americans, we may think we're not the migrants on the border, we're not the brown people being held in detention camps. But if we look back into our own history, and the exhibit is a good illustration of that, we're maybe 1 or 2 degrees of separation from the people that are being targeted currently today. And I would say that for all Americans, it's not just Asian Americans, that's for the rest of us too, everybody in this room. Because if you trace back your ancestry to how you got here, you're going to fall into one of those immigration categories, probably under attack right now. So what we're witnessing is basically a redefining of what it is to be an American. And that's why this exhibit is so important. So I really appreciate Asian American Bar Association for putting on this event. I appreciate your presence. After a couple of talks here, I'm going to lead a docent tour and explain some of the images that you will see. So thank you very much.